that people speak about everything other than what is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like
So yeah,
people
can you go into
pe
that?
yeah, sure. People are going on and 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 on as if they're working towards the truth, as if they're pursuing the truth, as if their position is right, as if this is the virtuous way, as if this is the unvirtuous way, as if this is the sane way, the non-sane way, as if this is the reasonable way, the unreasonable, the rational, the irrational, right? And these
Mm,
absolute ridiculous loops of character that they're wrapped in
mm-hmm.
while claiming to be um, speaking on the nature of being when the entire time they're speaking on nothing other than the abstracted phenomenon of the character and its assumptions regarding the nature of being.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah,
so
is there like yeah, keep going.
so I mean, it's like, I mean, exhausting to me doesn't even, that's not even a descriptive of enough word. I mean, I'm beyond exhausted, as you can imagine. That's part and parcel. But to
Yeah.
just to watch is, I'm just, again, to that, the statement I made earlier about the perpetual flabbergasted nature of my perception of, I'm witnessing,
Yeah.
I'm essentially seeing these people infinitely more than they can see themselves. And and
Right, right. Which I think like could be interpreted as some kind of statement about the intricacy by which you perceive psychology or something, whereas in fact, as I understand it, it isn't this infinitely isn't a measure of a particular distance, but that you're seeing from a completely different dimension.
yeah,
Right.
complete.
It's as if you're seeing from you're looking from above on this play that's occurring in a two-dimensional plane that
Yeah,
everyone is assuming is all
above
there
or
is.
below, because in a way I'm
Right, or
more
below in your case.
literally
Right.
metaphysically below all things. But
Right.
it's a similar absoluteness of perspective in that, due to the absoluteness of my condition, position, perspective, and nature of being, it is so infinitely far removed from the nature of those wrapped within the machinery of identity
Yeah.
that when ev- when when people are acting as they act, behaving as they behave, I see it for what it is. I'm not convinced of I mean, which is crazy because I can appreciate the character or not appreciate the character, but I'm never convinced of the character. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm never
Yeah, it
thinking that
makes
it's
total sense.
something other than a character in a cosmic play, a cosmic machine, cosmic machinery,
Right.
because it isn't. And if you're not seeing that, you are not simply wrapped up in the sentimentality of your condition and being for whatever reasons then you are, you're not seeing what you are. You're
Well, and I think that like that that fact right there to me is like and the distortion that prevents people from perceiving that is one of the reasons why the myth of enlightenment is so like persistent and also so uninformative,
yeah.
right? Like because it if you take the idea of enlightenment and you gaze upon it from a place of identification, then it just turns into a salvation myth,
Yeah, it's
right?
the same
Where
exact thing.
I, the
It's this.
identified being, is will be free because of these mechanisms, right?
It's the exact same thing as the messianic complex, just through the self as opposed to the externalized self. So now they've taken they've taken the messianic figure whom they've grown to detest, right?
Hmm.
Due to any personal sentiment regarding organized religion, and they've inverted it and assumed that the messianic complex is that which is within. Look inside. The truth lies
Right.
within. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
absolutely.
all they've done is turn it on its head, and involve themselves in the same um, another version of the same game
Yeah,
that they're calling something different, and they call it Buddhism,
yeah,
they call it meditation, they call it the pursuit of enlightenment, they call it non-duality, they call it um, whatever, any label that you're attempting to label at this of the ineffable, when in actuality that labeling and your pursuit of your character's personal pursuit of anything at all is the very thing that is keeping you from witnessing reality as it is.
right. Yeah, and the inevitable conclusion based on that, what I would call kind of like the karmic setup that requires those who are in this identity trap to escape it by way of salvation, right? The larger glimpses of reality that may be horrifying are actually like pathologized as false, because obviously reality has to be good,
Right, right,
and
right.
it's only my original sin in whatever form I conceive of it that's keeping me in a state of suffering, right? Like
Mm,
it's just this rebirth of the Abrahamic
yeah,
mythology
it's the same.
into whatever vessel is convenient, right?
Well, yeah,
And it's like, yeah,
especially
no wonder. Go on.
I was gonna say, especially for those who have associated some sort of either personal trauma or even cultural trauma with Abrahamic religiosity. Because if they've
Hmm.
associated some form of personal or interpersonal religious trauma with those sorts of approaches, they have now already assumed that those things as inferior, and now their new perspective as superior.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so now all they've done is adopt a new identity, new clothes, new colors, new labels, calling
And
it
new messiahs, right? Like
calling it
in
something
the
different, and a new messiah. You're calling yourself your own messiah, or the path,
or
the path of
if you're
dharma,
in
or whatever you're clinging to as the new what's the word, salvific, so what's the word, um
uh
uh,
yeah, whatever, like
the new avenue of salvation, whatever it might be.
yeah,
um
yeah.
so yeah.
Or if you're into like more of the traditional Vedic perspective, right? Then it, maybe even unfortunately, you have like this line of saints and holy men who existed until very recently, right? Like Ramana Maharshi died in like the 50s or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maybe
he
the
was
60s.
he's a modern, yeah, modern holy man, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, absolutely. But like
Mhm.
but if you read about his life, or like Sri Ramakrishna was another one, like there, we have photographs of these people. It's not like, it's not like the the prophets of the Bible.
Right.
Um, but like for instance, if you hear the story about how Ramana Maharshi became enlightened, right? It happened spontaneously when he was like 18. He was in some kind of weird catatonic state for 2 or 3 years, during which the people of his village or culture or whatever recognized what was going on with him and kept his body alive and fed him and whatever. And then he came out of that and, supposedly had this um, completely unobscured vision of unity, blah, 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 right? But like, again, what do you have is like, it's just another rendition of like the Chosen One story that
Sure.
like, oh, maybe that'll happen to me. Oh God, I'm already over 18. I guess it can't happen to me, but maybe
Yeah,
it'll
yeah,
happen in some
yeah,
other way, right? It's like
yeah.
all the same drama again and again and again and again and again. It just never fucking stops.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah, but at
my
least you're
God.
being honest. I mean, that's I guess from my position, I admire that in you because more for the sheer fact that you are uninclined to continue with whatever avenue of self, what's the word? Self deluding that is necessary as a means of coping and coming to a new system by which you feel um, comforted. I don't know if that's a lot of,
No, I
but
I hear you. I mean,
because
for me, it's a go on.
no, well,
Sorry.
because I mean, not that I don't want you to feel comforted. I want to feel comforted. Who doesn't? Um, what I'm saying is, it is extraordinarily rare. It's exactly what we started this conversation as. It's extraordinarily rare for anyone to have the perception to see things as they are, as opposed to what they want them to be, what they need them to be, what they should be, what they feel they are, what they'd like it to be, what they'd, and so on and so forth. And that very thing is what wraps back into what I was saying when everyone is talking about things other than what is. Um,
Hmm.
in that when people are discussing the supposed nature of reality, in actuality, all they are discussing are these abstracted perceptions of reality related to the character's identity that isn't, again, not something that isn't an aspect of reality, but they are not seeing that that's what it is. So they go
Right.
they go back into these loops of, no, this is the truth, no, this is the truth, no, that's the truth, no, I'm better, no, you're worse, no, this is better, that's worse.
Yeah, you're
I
wrong. Whatever.
You're
Yeah.
wrong. I'm right. I don't believe this. Why should I believe that? False intellectualism. Oh my God, the philosophical circle jerk of of people who are, God, makes me want to vomit. Like, just these people who need so desperately to feel like they are intellectuals and 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 have built these barriers of bullshit around their assumed intellect, which, more than often is probably not that intellectual. But
Well, it's also not, I mean, it's regardless of the raw power of the intellect, it's like
yeah,
set at the wrong task,
well,
right? So,
the
like, it
point
doesn't
is
matter how
exactly. I,
strong
I
it
guess
is.
that's what I mean about the false intellectuality. It's that one has weaponized their mind in such a way where they're not seeing what is right in front of them. Um,
Yeah,
and so
yeah, go on.
they get wrapped in whatever, and all the language, all the
Hmm.
rhetoric, all the stories, all the ironically they get wrapped in the very things that they're attempting to remove themselves from, or approach in a claimed like scientific manner, or
Right.
not yeah, or non-emotionally invested manner, when in fact that's all they are. They are emotionally invested, and they are
Right.
wrapped in their story, and they are wrapped in believing what they need to believe in for whatever reasons that they do.
Yeah, it's a like the thing that um for me, for whatever reason, like I have such a, I mean, I've spoken to you about this before, but like I have this deep kind of like soul loyalty to the overlooked
Mm.
and to the like the little guy that like can't figure out how to fit in, you know? Um, like the guy with the messy hair who just can't, just like can't get his shirt tucked in, can't,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever, like the
yeah, yeah.
inconvenient one, right?
Hmm.
And
I know that compassion.
somehow,
That's a deep compassion of mine too. Of I'm always pursued the ones who have been outliers, the true outliers
yeah.
of of society.
Well, and to me, it's like that loyalty to the outlier is the very thing that like drives, like to whatever degree I am like unhypnotized,
Yeah.
whatever that is, that makes me like a little bit different. It's that loyalty that did it, because what I see when everyone is making that show of their intellectual armor against like the catastrophe, what Sri Aurobindo called the Holocaust of the flesh, right? Like the catastrophe of being in a body that will die probably a painful death, you know.
Hmm.
Um, what I see is these, lost people so deeply in search of their own dignity, engrossed in a game of like casting themselves out and trying to make that little unfittable inconvenient guy inside of them fit into their like rigid structure of ultimately of like oppression to a false reality, you know.
Hmm.
And like something in me so balks at that with such intensity, because like I know the dearness that like lies in the heart of all of those people, and I get so pissed uh at their own like self denigration and self outcasting and all of this like machinery of war that they're using to try to comfort themselves instead of being honest. It's like there's something in me that just, and it's not just like I used to do that same shit,
Yeah.
but like somehow at some point the loyalty to the inconvenient little guy got so strong that I had to stop, because I saw somehow what I was doing to myself and what the spiritual teachers that I had studied under were trying to do to me too, you know,
Mm.
because they liked the performance that I gave
Mm.
that was based on being loyal to that little guy, right? Uh, as opposed to the real expression of myself, right? So anyway, I don't know. This is something that's kind of like new for me that I'm sort of understanding, right, in the last few weeks. Like what is it that I how is it that I have like loyalty to something that is stronger than my loyalty to that identity game, which seems to be an unusual condition,
It's
right?
rare.
Most
It's a
people are
it's
loyal to
a
the identity game overall.
Yeah, they can't help themselves. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
mean
it's
that's
completely
it's built
reflexive,
it's
right?
built into the mechanism of the majority of beings.
Yeah.
Because it's associated with biological survival. And and biological survival takes precedence, even if that
Right.
biological survival avoids the self-evident.
I mean, and maybe especially if it
Yeah,
avoids the self-evident, right?
yeah, especially if it avoids, yeah, because the self-evident is is a potential threat to the assumed being.
Yeah.
And yeah, which is why anyone who's yeah, basically anyone who's claiming to pursue the truth is playing in a game that they're unaware, that they've refined or made more subtle or put new disguises to or pretended it's this or it's that.
Yeah.
Um, but they're still just what they are as they are, riding that
Right.
ride, riding that ride until they die, and then that's it. Like so what were you ever? Whatever were you, that thing that you call yourself? And
Hmm.
and where were you going? And where did you think you
Yeah.
were going? And again, this is like, if I bring it back to myself, like I can speak on what I am and where I'm going and the trajectory it's taking, but the 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 absolute distinction is that it just is what it is, and I'm not claiming it's something other than what it is. And that's like the infinite difference is like people people are actually maybe have even some subtle awareness of the self-evident, but the whole game is actually wrapped around the attempts to avoid the self-evident. And that's what I'm getting at. It's like this, it's just all more discrete and subtle games of avoiding of the self-associated identity, attempting to avoid what the self-evident reality is. um
Hmm.
because that's what most characters do. That's what the thing that you've come to know yourself as does. um
Yeah, I mean, sir, and again, it's like I'm not sure to what extent that's like a product of like a cultural karmic product of this present moment in like industrialized society, or if it's a deeper dimension of like the unshakable human condition that
yeah, I just
I'm
think
not sure
it's
about that one.
I think it's just part of the yeah, it's part of the machinations of beings, of the mechanisms of how beings are. and and
Yeah.
and and so, like, for those who need not know, they do not know and will not know. I mean, I've said that in different ways all the time, but like
Hmm.
essentially this idea that within their ignorance they're free to remain ignorant, and that's a part and
Yeah.
that's an integral aspect and part of their blessing, to have no need to know anything other than their blessing. Um,
Right.
and that's how crazy. I mean, that's really, again, this absolute paradoxical nature of all things, where like these mechanisms are so perfect. They're so
Mm.
they're so infinitely integrated within all things. Made manifest in whatever way they're made manifest, but in the sense that, like, these paradigms of perception and experience,
Yeah.
they become so they're so self-sustaining that they like they necessarily exclude the other. and
Right.
and when it's taken to the absolute extreme, like, in my example, with myself, for example, where the paradigm of my personal experience is so infinitely removed from most everything and everyone that
Hmm.
there's quite literally almost no one I can talk to even a little bit about it, because the only one who must experience it is this one that I call myself. Um,
Right.
and that's, this is all infinitely integrated. Like I said, that's an infinitely integrated aspect of condition, of my condition and my being. And each one,
Right.
that's the case for each and every one, for infinitely better or infinitely worse. Um,
Yeah.
and for those who exist in the positive paradigm of experience, they have no need to know of the negative paradigm of experience. I mean, I think about this a lot, just for me. Other people probably don't think about this much, but like I think about the perspective of Jesus Christ or whomever, or of Krishna, of what it is to be the single sovereign Lord of the universe, to be witnessing the mechanisms of the entire cosmic creation, but on the positive end of the polarity as opposed to on my end. Um,
Yeah.
and it's an interesting little mind game that I can play with, because I it's so crazy, but essentially I've come to the conclusion that for a being like that, let's assume it's Jesus Christ or Krishna or whomever, for a
Sure.
being like that, though they can witness, let's say, the entire eternal time scale, even let's even include the entire eternal time scale within their own perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
in a way, because that being exists within the side of on the side of infinite polarity, the infinite positive side of the polarity,
Yeah.
that being need not have any conception of what it is like to exist on my side of the polarity.
Yeah,
Even,
this is what I was going to ask, actually. I was just going to ask this. Like, in by that, like, did Jesus know about you? Is,
well,
essentially is the question.
essentially, Jesus wept, right? People say Jesus wept, but
Yeah.
Jesus wept while he was a man.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So yes, Jesus did weep while he was a man, just like he died while he was a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
if you take the words of the scripture to be true, in his eternally glorified state, tears no longer mean anything like what they mean to us within
Right.
these conditions. Um,
Sure.
it's an infinitely removed condition of being, of eternal bliss, that has no relevance to the suffering of any meat machine, let alone one who is bound
Mm-hmm.
to a condition of inconceivable torment and unending suffering. So there's
Mm-hmm.
this crazy paradigm where I, 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 one of the few things I speculate about. But again, I also think about this a lot, clarifying the nature of speculation, because I say I don't speculate about anything, and that's true in the sense that there's nothing I don't have an answer to, and that's
Right.
an infinite misfortune to me. But so if and when I'm speculating, it's not that I'm looking for an answer, because I already have the answer. The answer is the self-evident thing of what is right, happening right now in front of me, always, perpetually, and
Right.
that's true for all things. Um, what I'm speculating about is attempting through my experience to assume myself into the position of another being, um, to see if I can play in that dynamic of assuming myself in the position of another being. And it's weird
Yeah.
because in like some subtle way I can.
I mean, that's not surprising,
But
right? Like if your condition means that you have like consistent or constant witnessing of the absolute, right?
yeah.
Like it seems like a relatively small step to like
Well,
at least imagine what it would be like to shift your perspective to the other polarity.
right. I can like assume their perspective, and when I assume their perspective, at least intellectually, mentally, I can associate what it is like to be within their position and why they are what they are. And that's actually how I gain some insight into what it is that each being is and why they're doing what they're doing, because I can again, I can see it, and I can and so this anyway, yeah, that's a confusing thing to try to put to words, um
Mhm.
but the other thing is, simultaneously I am still only what I am at the same time,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
it's really crazy, but like, um you know because people build these rhetorics, especially Christians, around Christ and stuff like that. People want to think, oh, Jesus is infinitely compassionate, all this stuff, blah 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 blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And I've come to the witnessing, or even the potential conclusion, that in fact Jesus is not compassionate at all. He,
Hmm.
he is the
Say
antithesis.
more.
He's the antithesis of compassionate. He is, now again, there's distinctions to be made here. He is love. He is the source of love, even. But he is not compassionate, because being he that him as a being no longer has to, and never will have to, suffer a minute speck ever again for infinite eternities.
Hmm.
And so there is
Hmm.
no opportunity for him to have compassion on beings. He
Right.
and this correlate wraps into what I've spoke about in myself, where I have this sort of inherent infinite compassion for beings. And it's integrated into my infinite suffering.
I mean,
These are
it reminds me of like moments when I have had, or when I've more pointedly when I've seen this happen in others, where like I've been in the presence of someone who was having a revelation about the perfection of all things, about how reality is totally perfect and everything is totally as it should be,
Yeah.
right? Which to them was an extremely profound experience,
Mhm.
right? But in that state, which you might call Christ consciousness, there is this kind of like, all the suffering makes sense and doesn't really need to change, right? Because everything is as it should be, you
Yeah,
know?
well, everything is as
Is
it
this kind
is. Uh,
Well,
yeah.
yes, of course, but
Yeah.
the human experiencing the revelation experiences a twist on that, right?
Yeah.
Through the mechanism of like the individuated mental consciousness, which is to say, which of course shows that the revelation is incomplete, right? Because it's like, it's not, everything is as it is. It's hard for that to be a revelation. There's not a lot of gas in that tank, you know?
It's too,
Everything is as it should be is like a huge catharsis, because all of your resistance crumbles, right?
for one
And
who's
and
still
everything that you're
who's still clinging to, yeah,
to
to
identity. Yeah, of course it's a
yeah,
of course it feels like a final revelation from the perspective of one who is still completely enmeshed in identity.
yeah,
And that's why it feels so good, right? Because like
yeah,
you can't have, it's like, why does an orgasm feel good? Because it's like, it's the moment when your identity like finally crumbles and you like
yeah,
surrender to like the
to the
transcendent
moment,
experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
entirely, yeah.
um but of course that's not like a sustainable condition. um and it can, anyway, th- I might be going far afield here. I'm just thinking
No,
about
no, no.
like what it brought up was that like people that I've seen who are in touch with the isness of everything often are not compassionate, because they're just like, well, that's the suffering is as it is, and that's all it is, and so, what do you want to do about it? um
Which, yeah, I mean,
and
I'm at that same point, but the distinction is that they have no need to associate with the suffering anymore, because if they
right.
have if they have if they are within a privileged enough position to be liberated from the suffering, then they have no
Right.
association with it anymore. Whereas
Right.
in my condition, it's the infinite and absolute opposite, obviously. the association is only with the suffering, but that's
Right.
but it's an equally absolute reality. um and so, and this is where I get to those kind of
Mm.
things that I say, where like at the point of the absolute, there's there are two results. Either, I say things like it's either death or death alone, or death with life alone. um
Right.
because
Right.
I'm saying these kind of things because I'm attempting to put metaphor to make it tangible, at even in the slightest, to someone who doesn't have to, or yeah, doesn't have to, nor is either free to, in either side of the polarity,
Right.
to witness things simply as they are. Because for anyone who exists in the static in between the two polarities, they're wrapped within the machinery and cannot see it. So when
Right.
this is why I attempt to use some of the metaphor and sayings that I do. Again, not because I'm attached to those things, but because they come closest to describing the truth as best as I can to someone who doesn't have to experience it in the way
Right.
that I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it brings up this very interesting question of, I mean, one of the difficulties that you have when you're speaking is that your message, or whatever you want to call it, is like so in opposition to so much dogma
Hmm.
and doctrine.
Oh, the truth
and
is
the
the
and the
truth is always in opposition to dogma and doctrine.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true, but it's also, to some degree, it's kind of a question of degrees, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I know that that's not the case. I mean, whatever absolute is always in a different dimension, so it's not, you can't get there incrementally, whatever. But it's like, in the same way, that's like as above, so below, um, is a it is a true statement that when said from a non-exalted consciousness is trite, but when said by someone who's actually beholding
Mm.
the vastness of that truth, is like an, an ocean of meaning,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
um so this is what I'm talking about, where like you can have someone parrot and chirp as above, so below, um and they are, even though they're not speaking from a conscious perspective that can actually witness the truth of what they're saying, and so they're being foolish in some way, there is a kind of or not reconciliation, but like there's a sort of, at least what they're saying is actually true, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Whereas like, and like that applies to many, sort of like spiritual aphorisms or whatever. And the aphorisms that you speak to are like very much out of the realm of what we're hearing, right?
You're
And
breaking.
so it's like
Oh,
you're doing double. Oh, sorry.
sorry, you
Yeah,
broke up a
I'm
little
walking through. A little area that has kind of poor reception, but I'll be out of it in a few seconds. Um, so it's like you're having to do double duty. Like,
bit. Mm.
one,
Yeah.
you're not speaking to people who are in a state of consciousness to be able to perceive truth in the first place. That's
Yeah.
very normal, right?
I mean,
But
that's
on top of it,
and
you're also not
but
feeding them.
these same people who think that they are perceiving, which
Yeah,
is,
of course,
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah,
course. But that, and then on top of that, you're not feeding them, you're not spoon feeding them aphorisms that
that
they
they want to
feel
hear.
are true. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes.
And so
Yes, literally.
you're really up against it.
Yeah, because
um,
everything I say is against what they want to be,
right.
and
Yeah.
everything I say is against their fallacy, their personal fallacy. And so everything
Which
I
actually, like
everything I say,
fascinatingly, go on.
no,
Sorry,
I
sorry.
was going to say
Keep going.
everything I say in a way is a contest to them. It's a contest to their being. And so the
Right.
immediate resort is to 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 go back to those those weapons of the character and identity and whatever and what have you, and all the stuff that they cling to desperately without seeing that they're doing so. Yeah.
When in fact, the much more honest thing would be to just say, like, well, I'm really glad that I have the spiritual privilege to not know what the fuck you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
at least they
that
be
sounds
honest.
that's yeah, like that sounds pretty intense.
Oh,
That's not my reality.
there's
Thanks,
an
God. Good.
yeah. Thanks,
There's what?
whomever. Yeah, yeah. No, I was gonna say
Yeah,
there's
thanks, whatever.
things. Yeah, well, whatever they're inclined to thank. Um, uh, there's a near 0% of the population who is honest.
Yeah.
Because it's again it's so integrated in the same mechanisms of because honesty dissolves the overlay that was placed onto reality. And if it's dissolved, what have you then? Um, and I mean, it's and it's funny because people talk about this stuff. They whatever, especially through more Eastern traditions and all this stuff, blah blah blah. But like,
Hmm.
but it just becomes about the same stuff, the same stories, different faces, different places, and also back to that idea that in reality, all these people are doing is attempting at, like we said, the messianic complex all along, regardless of whether they
Yeah.
do it through an externalized Messiah or not. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and
Um,
I mean, even people who are supposed atheists or non-theists or non-religious or non-spiritual, they're doing the same exact thing through some mechanism, whether they call it science or philosophy or whatever, whatever associated dogma and doctrine and presuppositional rhetoric that they need to cling to as a means of appeasing themselves.
well, and it's also a collective issue, right? Like I'm involved with this, with my like at my work where like there are things that can't be like there's just ways that I'm not allowed to be straightforward.
Yeah.
Like it would I would incur
Well,
an immense
it
social
would break
penalty.
yeah, it would break the dynamic of the superficiality that is necessary to sustain the whatever is going on.
Yeah. 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 Exactly.
Yeah.
And like the number of I mean I this is another thing that I've found really shocking, and it was kind of when I went through a process of maybe a year or two where my kind of like personal revelations were all in this domain about like personal honesty and why it's difficult, even though we all long for honesty, like we all long for truth, and the body, like the body knows truth and it wants truth and it longs for truth, and yet we continue to like be embroiled in all manner of hypocritical nonsense constantly. um and just like the amount of this of like non-straightforwardness, I'll call it, right? Like I don't necessarily like dishonesty is maybe too harsh a word, but like the amount of non-straightforwardness that's required for any amount of sort of like human partnership, at least in the
Mm.
karmic condition that we have, right,
Well, exactly.
is
That's
is
the
so
thing.
intense.
Is because if you're at least further towards the bottom of the barrel in terms of karmic burden or whatever, um,
Hmm.
the the mechanisms of the dynamics and the interplay within said realms of yeah said realms of social interaction or whatever, they're extraordinarily muddied, and again it kind of comes back to survival, where like most everyone's simply doing what they must do to survive, and even if it's layered with a bunch of different things. Um,
Yeah.
and even whatever, even if you get to my position where like all I'm doing is attempting to survive another day, even though I know the reality is that it's futile, infinitely futile.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, this stuff is just like it's that again, it's that perfect and it's that fucking insane. It's that rigged. Sometimes I want to even say, sometimes I even say that, for lack of a better way, it's that.
No, I mean rigged is exactly the word because like you have this weird system where I mean it's rigged in infinitely intricate ways, but like one of the very obvious ways that it's rigged is that like almost everyone is just doing what they have to do to survive,
Yeah,
including not being straightforward. And the ones who are privileged enough to be able to do a lot more than survive generally are the ones who are so loyal to the system that they spend all of their freedom perpetuating the forces of oppression.
oh sure,
Right?
they have to have heads to step on.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, or so they believe, right? Yeah.
No, or I think realistically they have to. I mean that's back to that hierarchical necessity of nature. Without the dead, there's no heads for the living to stand on. I mean, in the sense that like the mechanics of everything, even if one does not believe that they need to do so, or if one does not believe that they are doing so, they still are doing so. Um, if
I mean, yeah, that's true, but it's also questions of degrees, right? Like the amount of head stepping that we are capable of doing in like the post-industrial era is so enormously intense compared to what was historically possible,
mm,
right? And so it's like strictly speaking from a biological perspective, the amount of head stepping that we do today is not necessary, obviously, right? Now maybe it's necessary from a karmic perspective or
yeah,
something, right? But
I
it's
guess
not
that's
necessary from a
what I'm getting at. It's necessary from a universal perspective. I mean, you even like for example, Christ himself is stepping on the heads of the wicked. I mean, that's literally the mechanisms that are coming to play. If you assume the Lord of the universe promises to crush the heads of the wicked. So yeah, it really is that integrated. Um,
hmm Yeah,
and
so maybe it's like more that industrialism didn't change anything except
I think
ability, right? Like the
yeah, I
capacity
think
to do it
I
got
think it
significantly expanded.
exacerbates it. It also heightens the awareness of what is happening in that
Hmm
you can see that now. Um, getting your diamond ring from Tiff or from whatever from Tiffany's,
Yeah,
or I don't even know if they do shit diamonds or whatever. But the point is, you
yeah.
get it from Tiffany's or Saks
De
Fifth
Beers,
Avenue in
right? De Beers.
yeah, on your billionaire husband gives you a 10 carat diamond um for your engagement that you're gonna then break off.
Right.
But but in the past, when that first started, those people didn't necessarily have to have association with the hundreds of African children who died to mine that diamond. But now in the modern world, there's an increased awareness of what is necessary to get that diamond. It doesn't mean that people are going to stop, but there is a collective awareness. I don't know. It's like integrated in the collective consciousness, and that the self-apparentness of of some stepping on the heads of the other becomes more and more apparent. But in another way, it's becoming less and less apparent. Like it's just getting more subtle. Like
hmm
it comes to that thing of like, you think you're going to change the world, you think you're going to better the world, but on your pursuit to change and better the world along the way, how many people did you use and abuse to do so? And how
Right.
and and so if and when you get to your supposed claimed journey, was it worth it? Was it not worth it? I mean, that's all a subjective, judgmental perception. When in reality,
Yeah.
reality is just reality, and each one is always experiencing what they're experiencing. And yeah, there were certainly sacrifices made along the way by others for you or whomever to to pursue that supposedly altruistic goal. Um,
Hmm.
and this is, this is where when you start to see the absolute interconnected matrix of everything. There really is no benevolence from a being in a way, other than a being who is simply privileged enough to exist within a condition of love and radiance, and thus they can give it.
Yeah.
But again, that's a simple condition of relative privilege that they happen to have the circumstance of experiencing, and all the while there's still the innumerable other realities of those who are suffering horrible consequence for no reason other than that they are. Um, so
Hmm.
there's always this interplay and dynamic within within everything. It's just such is the nature of all things. And it goes back to that like that polarity we were talking about in the beginning of like, goodness takes sadness, light takes darkness, whatever. That sort of seemingly superficial revelation
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that can also be infinitely and eternally profound, because you see that same truth goes on forever, and the layers are infinite. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I can actually feel um I can feel the collective karmic programming in my system objecting to what you're saying.
yeah,
It's like it's a wild experience actually.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, because it's that strong. It's that strong.
well, and it also like,
I mean, it's
I
that strong. Like the whatever. No, say what you were gonna say. Go for it.
no, I mean, I think that there is some uh somewhere within the and I think that for me, I sort of suspect this is where some things are headed for me.
Mm.
Like part of our relationship, like as in my view, as like not just Westerners, right? But like as Americans who are um, inculcated into a a particular type of like militaristic thinking. And also as a people, like Americans hate individuality, right? Like we pray to the cult of individualism. But when it comes to actual celebrations of the expression of true individuality,
Mm.
we don't like it. We object to it. We because it like we're afraid of narcissists, even as we pledge our money to narcissists. You know, like we're obsessed with cults, and yet are constantly and we're led by a cult leader, right? Like in the White House, and yet are constantly like, you know, no one's going to get one over on me. You know
Mm.
what I mean? It's like we're in this constant dance of like because we don't know how to exist without some kind of super intense um power structure, right? We have no faith in ourselves. And so we're always in this game of like, who's the authority? Who said, I mean, that's what you see online also, right? All of this arguing, philosophical arguing that ultimately amounts to like argument by authority, because no one's actually talking from their own experience, right?
And again, no one's talking about what actually is, only talking
Right.
about, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like would that they were only not talking from their own experience, right? Not only they're like far away even from that.
Yeah.
Um, and so anyway, like we also have to be comfortable. It's almost like one of the reasons people don't want to hear what you have to say is that there is a incorrect but very compelling logical conclusion that stems from what you have to say, which like leads into a place of meaninglessness, that like life has no meaning because everything is just as it is, everything is made up, it's all just stories, whatever. And that's like a frightening
Yeah.
prospect,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
the
you
the
have to,
system wants to engage in some, it wants to play the game, it wants to play the game,
yes, you have to face oblivion if you want to see the truth. And
right.
no one wants to face oblivion.
But not only, but here's the thing: once you, and this is where I'm maybe speculating. I'm just like having the experience that I'm having, right?
Hmm.
Which is that like all of this, this type of information, which is this is not the first time that I've heard it. It's not the first time that I've thought about it. Um, and in fact, like a big part of my evolution has been dealing with, essentially taking the question seriously. What if life is as bad as it seems? You know,
Mm, yeah.
everyone wants to talk you out of that idea. It's not as bad as it seems. Tomorrow's another day, blah,
Well,
blah, blah, blah,
and,
blah. And
and
I'm
and
like, what if
again,
it
like
is?
the question I'll ask is, it's not as bad as it seems for who and for what,
Yeah, of
and
course.
it always comes
Of
back to
course.
this. So only a person in relative privilege can say it's not as bad as it seems. Like,
Right. Yeah,
because
exactly.
if you're getting your arms ripped off by a bear in that moment, you might say it is as bad as it seems. You might. Um,
Right. It might even be worse
yeah,
than it seems.
right.
So, uh, I mean, this is another part of kind of like my own personal journey of like requiring myself in some weird way to take the question seriously. What if it's as bad as it seems?
Yeah.
Um, and for myself, at least, there's like something happens when you have something happens to me when I have the bravery to kind of like really stare that stuff in the face and really take it seriously. It turns out it doesn't actually, like, knowing that it's a game, for example, actually doesn't diminish the importance of how things feel. And this is sort of what I was talking about in terms of like where my consciousness rests versus like the places of revelation that I've been, but that I don't like occupy on a regular basis. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I live in a particular place of enmeshment, of karmic enmeshment or karmic bondage or identity, that is like highly interested in like un unperplexing certain dimensions of the karmic field, right? Even though I also know that like I'm driven to that helplessly, and whatever I do is like just not actually me doing anything, right? In the like in the way that the Gita describes,
Yeah.
right? These
Yeah.
guys are already dead.
Yeah.
Like your enemies are already dead. So don't worry about it. You didn't kill them, I killed them.
Well, yeah. I will. They will be dead without. They will be destroyed without your participation.
Yeah. Even
And
though he's going to be the one killing them all,
right.
right? Even though it's Arjuna who's going to be killing him,
Right.
right?
and
Um,
and then saying you will be inclined to do what is born of your material nature.
right. So it's like this very interesting, it's like an interesting karmic kink that takes that truth and makes the heart sink with the idea that that everything is pointless, right? Like that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, and again,
That's our own
pointless.
kink in the game,
Yeah, and pointless for
right?
who and what. And I mean, like for I bring it back to me where I know my purpose. I have a purpose, absolutely. It is self-apparent what my purpose is. The infinite distinction is that I'm also infinitely certain that none of what I do will ever positively serve me in any way. So
Mm-hmm.
these are simultaneous truths for me from my condition and my
Yeah.
position. Um,
Yeah.
so there is a point to everything and a purpose to everything. It's just not mine, and it never was.
Mm-hmm. 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 What is your purpose? Like how, I think I know, but
I
what would you
mean,
say your purpose is?
I serve the meta system of all things. I do the dirty work for. I bear the burden. I do the serve as the antagonist, the the perfect polarity, the footstool for the maker, the foundation of
Right.
creation. All these things that
The darkness that has to exist for the light to come into being
I am the
or
built-in
whatever.
the built-in burden bearer. That which the world is free to dismiss,
Drive
deny.
into the desert.
Yeah, dismiss, deny, devoid, degradate, denigrate, whatever those words are.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all of them, and that is my purpose. It is self-apparent, um, and I'm working endlessly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not benefit. Also, self-evidently, I'm certainly not benefiting from that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Mm,
so yeah, it's like I mean, again, which another integrated aspect of why I say things like I'm having an infinitely different conversation and playing an infinitely different game because there's almost there's like a near zero correlation of most things I say to anyone and everything. Actually,
hmm.
the things I'm saying, I'm attempting to put some relationship to a being that can perceive it other than me, and
Right.
um, but yeah, others cannot see, they don't have to see, they have no need to see absolute
Yeah,
reality.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hence the eternal thankless sacrifice for all.
Yeah, hence, because in fact, not only am I not thankless, I mean, because even in the thanks, the passive thanks and love that I've received in my life, all of it has all only been an integrated part of my condition, and and not only am I not thanks, I'm cursed, right? I'm cursed
Hmm.
by others. I'm cursed by God. I'm cursed by myself, I suppose. Um, and yeah, and that's also obviously an integrated aspect of it all. um,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, it's. I mean, I get it. I get why no one conceives of what I say, believes what I say, has any reason to even think about what I say in a self-apparent way because it is so distinct and different from what they're experiencing. And
Hmm.
likewise they have no necessity. And I see that also simultaneously. Of course I do. Just like I see
Yeah.
all of it. Um,
I mean, I think that it actually is. I think that what you say is far more relevant to people than they think it is.
sure. Oh, I mean
Like to me, it's
well,
extremely relevant.
it's infinitely relevant actually,
Yeah.
but from their small world experience, whatever you want to call it, from their bubble world experience,
Yeah.
it seems negligible because
Hmm.
from their perception for the moment it may be until of course
Yeah.
the moment of truth.
Until the day of doom.
Yeah, the day of doom. Exactly. Until they see what
Uh,
until they are forced to see what I see, for better or worse, from their perspectives and their reality.
I mean,
And
is that something that like you have insight into in terms of like, is there a, I mean, because like there are many traditions that talk about how like even the blades of grass will be awakened, right? Like like that awakening is coming for everyone.
yeah, but so every I the problem with well, this kind of language gets very elusive. It gets very eluding, like elusive with an e.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like steering away from pointing at the truth, even though it's pointing at the truth. It's like
Hmm.
especially when you say these things like everyone and all and um, those kind of words, because all of it's all of who and all of what and all of um, and it seems like an emphatically and intrinsically truly all inclusive phrasing,
Hmm.
but again there's these paradigms that break down that truth, because all might only include all that's within the sphere of all. Now if there are those that exist outside of that sphere of all, they're not among the all. And I know
Hmm.
that's odd, but because the paradigm has totally broken, it's totally shifted, where all does not mean all anymore. It doesn't mean, it
Hmm.
means all of something.
Sure.
um
Sure.
not not all of all others. um
Well, I mean, in the Buddhist tradition, they talk about all sentient beings, right? Which you would certainly seem to qualify as,
yeah,
right?
and I'm infinitely certain that that's not the case for, like, yeah. So yeah, I mean there's the possibility, and I've kind of discussed this before, that I might be the very singular being that has to experience anything like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is possible, which is, I mean, would only add to the infinite irony of it, and because it adds to the infinite irony of it, makes it actually more plausible. Um,
Right. Yeah. Totally. I'm gonna say, yeah. This seems about right. That
and
tracks.
and 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 which is, again, part of the infinite fuckery and absolute bullshit of my condition, and even more evidence of that, the eternal thankless sacrifice kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Because essentially I'm the singular fundamental sacrifice for the entire infinite cosmos,
Hmm.
and then some, and then some, and then more.
Hmm.
um and that's, what, like, there could not be anything more absurd. There is nothing more absurd. um
Yeah.
there's absolutely nothing more absurd.
Hmm. Um. Okay. So fair enough. That's not that there's like the question ends up like steering into weird directions. But like, is there anything useful to be had with such a question?
With which question?
This
Sorry.
question of like what at what point are um like okay, so the presupposition, and I think this is the thing that so many, or this is one of the points that people really object to in kind of like your metaphysics, because um part of the cultural inheritance of Westerners, and especially Americans, is this Protestant supposition that like somehow those who suffer in life are superior to others, right? Like they'll have their that people who are enjoying their time on Earth, people who are, and especially people like Donald Trump, who is like, whose enjoyment of his time on Earth takes on like truly goonish dimensions, will like get their comeuppance in the afterlife. And then, of
Mm,
course, the secularization of that is that, well, those people are operating in ignorance, and ultimately they're kind of hurting themselves as they like have the party that no one that that I wasn't invited to. They're actually
mm.
hurting themselves somehow, right?
Yeah, that's
Um, and when they wake up and when they come, when their ignorance is finally shed, they'll see uh, how cruel they've been, right?
yeah.
Um, but like that is, I mean, and I, okay, even like in my own case, right? Like I see a lot of people um, who are uh, miserable and tell themselves a story about how they're not miserable, and I can see their misery, and they would be shocked to be informed of it, you
Yeah.
know? And so like there is something to this notion of like ignorance. I mean, I know you say no, ignorance is bliss, but I have also seen that ignorance is suffering, right?
Well,
I've seen both.
again, it depends how you reference ignorance and what type of ignorance you're talking about and how it's approached. So yeah,
Hmm.
ignorance can what I will say and what I always tend to say is that ignorance is bliss for the vast majority in the sense that for those who need not know the absolute horrors of reality, their ignorance serves them well.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's more what I'm referring to when I say
Hmm.
that.
Like in Valis, when Philip Dick writes, "One of God's infinite mercies is that He keeps us permanently occluded."
Mm.
Right.
I get, yeah,
Um,
infinite mercies for who and for what, but yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah,
well,
um,
the those who are occluded in Philip Dick's case, right?
right, yeah,
Those who are
exactly,
occluded and are not and do not have to witness the naked reality that
yes,
he had to witness, right? Like that's his whole like he got. I don't know if you know anything about his life,
no, not
um,
really,
but he had a he had a ongoing sort of like divine revelation over the course of a couple of years in the early 70s, and um it's he spent the rest of his life trying to figure out what the fuck had happened to him, and he wrote some really interesting shit about it. And
yeah,
again, it's interesting to see someone who was, he was very smart, he was very well read, but again, culturally, like he didn't have the tools to digest what he had seen, and so he was just kind of fumbling around doing the best he could. But the fact that he says things like one of God's infinite mercies is that He keeps us permanently occluded, meaning others,
yeah,
it indicates that something very real was happening to him,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He was
Um,
witnessing something
yeah,
for
for
sure.
sure, for sure. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking about like the ways that I see people being cruel.
Well,
That they're,
because from the I think the thing is this frame of reference of like what type of ignorance and you know what type of delusion, what type of because from I could say from my condition and my position, everyone in the universe is delusional other than me.
hmm
Whereas everyone in
hmm
the universe can also say that I'm delusional. Um,
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so delusional from whose perspective and ignorant from whose perspective? Um, I I guess I'm just infinitely certain that everyone's wrapped in their game and doesn't see things as they are. So
Hmm.
so to me that is ignorance. And from my condition and my position, for the majority, that serves them well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where the tendency to say something like ignorance is bliss comes in. With that said, there you can break past. If you go past, let's say, that Goldilocks zone of ignorance, um,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
where you go to the positive side of the polarity, in which you are no longer ignorant, but you're experiencing the benevolent attributes of being. Um,
Hmm.
then yeah, then ignorance is no longer bliss because you've now encountered a new, infinitely more enrapturing bliss than the bliss that you had prior while within your ignorance. Does that make sense?
But it does. But then it would seem to me that what would then follow is that more rapturous experience itself depends on a level of ignorance, right? Just a more transcendent level of ignorance.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it kind of almost comes back to that story that I was telling earlier about me trying to assume the perspective of Christ and thinking
Right.
that
Yeah.
does he have to know what it is like to suffer in my condition? And no, he's free in a way. Even Christ is free to be ignorant to my reality.
Right.
Um,
And yeah,
so
exactly.
so
Exactly.
yeah,
So it's like that's very interesting, right? That like the ignorance is bliss, ignorance is a curse, ignorance is bliss is like yet another like braid in the like infinite fractal
yeah.
geometry of reality.
And the absolute paradox of positioning, of like, in one person's position it is, and another it isn't, and from one related to the other it is or it isn't, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's that insanely perfect and that insanely paradoxical. Um,
Yeah. It's the crystal shit.
that crystal shit, yeah, this shit of singularity.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Hmm.
I mean, and it's really crazy because, for me, I reflect on this nature of what it would be like to be the Lord of the universe, like the single embodiment of the Lord of the universe, and it's a really funny thing because I, I don't want it to be the case, but it very well may be the case that, like, in a way, God doesn't even, like, the personality of the Godhead does not even have to be all knowing. It doesn't,
Hmm.
because in the sense that it doesn't have to. It can be all witnessing, and
Hmm.
I believe that it is all witnessing. And so this is a distinction that where people get wrapped in the all-knowing God. They get wrapped in that kind of stuff. All-knowing God,
Sure, sure.
omnibenevolent God, omniscient, omnipotent, whatever, that kind of stuff, because they're whatever
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
trying to solve a puzzle that is unsolvable
Yeah.
until you see it for what it is. Um,
Yeah.
but like, what I'm saying is, like, each subjective being, even if that subjective being happens to be the single personality of the Godhead, only has to experience its own subjectivity. And so the infinite privilege of being the singular personality of the Godhead is that it's the singular personality of the Godhead. And
Right.
it can witness the entire cosmos, but not have to bear the consequence of it.
Right, right. Yeah, sure. And like if the witnessing of uh like if the experience of non-godheadness is an intricate part of the suffering, right? Then the universal witnessing can witness that suffering is occurring, but it has no traction on the universal witness,
Right,
right?
exactly. Whereas in my position, it's the opposite. I'm doing a universal witnessing with complete burden, complete attachment to the suffering, complete,
Right.
so it's like that's that perfect polarity that I speak of. And
Yeah,
so
that's very weird. Like that's really a wild I mean, because again, you think that the absolute you think that the perspective of the absolute uh lightens suffering by nature for exactly this reason, right? That like that suffering is seen for what it is, and like, okay, yes, now I see like the distress in the body mind maybe still is still there, but the like existential identity that like transmutes pain into suffering is lifted, right? um
for the lucky ones,
so
yeah.
well, and that's the thing, it's like even all of the like mechanics of consciousness that that um that come to my mind anyway, make it such that that experience that you report is like very hard to understand, right? Very hard to understand. Like I
Yeah.
can hear reports of people in unity consciousness and it makes sense to me, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
um but like but there's like the how that could end up in the opposite polarity is like, wow, that's very which again is not to the, of course it's not to say that what you're saying is not true, right? It's just to speak to the difficulty um
Well,
of
not only the difficulty to conceive of it, but also the lack of desire to believe that it's true.
well, that's less the case for me, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't have
for you that's less the case, I know, but for
yeah
most, I'm saying that is
yeah
strongly
yeah
the
yeah
case.
totally
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
totally but what I'm saying is like even without that resistance to believing it, right? Hold on, I'm starting my car. Okay, you back. Like even without the obstacle of like resistance to the belief because it's inconvenient and I don't want to deal with it, is like it's still conceptually like like I have a hard time following this. Like again, a lot of what you say, and I mean this is the reason that I got in touch with you in the first place, because a lot of what you say is obviously true, right? And I can recognize it as true because I know what truth is, or I know I know something about what truth is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then there are these other dimensions that get away from me because I'm just like, yeah, that just doesn't. It's like it doesn't mesh with my experience, and I can't, and I'm like I can't figure out what such an experience would be like. You
Yeah.
know, to
And I
have
understand
an
that.
experience of the absolute without like an immediately co-rising experience of freedom and freedom from suffering is like, that's, you know what I mean? I'm like, I just don't know what that experience is like. It's, I mean, I know what it's like to have a bad trip, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
No. I mean, it is a bad trip, that's for sure. It's an eternally bad one. Um,
um so yeah, anyway, not this is of course not to say that I don't believe what you're saying or that you're wrong or anything. I'm just reporting on my own kind of like
I
difficulties
mean,
with
I'm always a,
interfacing with it.
I'm always aware of that, regardless of
Yeah.
who I'm talking to, even if I'm talking to you. Um, I want to simultaneously be both as candid as possible, but also conveying things in a way where anyone can even attempt to conceive of what I'm trying to say. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and it's very, very, very difficult, as you can imagine,
Oh,
and
I imagine. Yeah.
as you,
Yeah, of course.
um, and also an integral part of it is that I think in the very first time we spoke to one another, you said something about my nature being somewhat of the infinitely unrelatable. Um,
Right.
I don't know if you
Yes.
remember that,
Yeah.
but yeah, but 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 that's
I think I also responded like I was following you on Reddit at the time, and like just I was sort of seeing like, okay, what's Yada gotten up to today on r/slash free will or whatever,
Yeah,
and
that's the only one I
someone
haven't been banned from at this point, so.
someone responded to something that you said by saying like, I totally relate to what you're saying, but blah 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 blah, and then dismissing everything that you're saying,
Yeah.
and I responded to him because I was kind of like, whatever. I was in a period of writing, of interacting with Reddit more than I am now, which I'm not even. I uninstalled it from my phone because I just can't anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but I responded to him saying like, if I understand what Yada is saying, like, actually you can't relate to what he's reporting, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Like, presumably one of his services to the universe is trying against all odds to get people to put that in their pipes and smoke it.
Yeah.
Um
To just straight up look at what is.
yeah, yeah.
Over,
And
I mean, that's it. That's all I'm doing every day is not doing anything
well,
other,
and
and people
to
hate it.
me, no, they totally hate it. But to me, like, one of the things find that I found super useful in your perspective, and I probably have said this to you before, but like, even the act, for me, like, even the act of having to come to terms with your position is super super useful to someone who's actually interested in truth. You
Yeah.
know, like, it's very very useful in a very practical sense to have to deal with the possibility of the worst possible outcome that consciousness could conceive of, right? Like, if there are no limits in consciousness, which any number of new age dipshits loves to repeat over and over again,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah, if there are no limits in consciousness, then obviously it must be possible for one person to have the worst experience possible
Yeah,
forever,
forever.
right?
Yeah.
So, like, are you serious about your celebration of the fact that there are no limits in consciousness? Because that's a pretty hardcore thing to, like, interface with,
No, they're not. They're not. They're
right?
not. They're not. They're not serious about the truth at all.
Anything.
They're yeah.
Yeah, they're not serious about anything.
They're they're concerned with what they want slash need to believe. I mean,
Right.
that's really it, over and over and over and over and over
Yeah.
and over again. And again, back to that very first statement I said tonight, of that there's not a single person who is seeing what they are and why they are what they are and what it is that this all is. They're
Hmm.
failing perpetually to do so, and the mechanisms of their personified machinery somewhat necessitates that, and
Right.
so it goes on and on and on and on and on, and everyone plays the exact character that they're born to play, whether they're aware of it or not, and then in the end it is the end, and that's the end, and they go on to be whatever they are after or not, and so it is. But we have these, because sentient beings have these associated identities. um it's again, it's an integrated part of the being,
Yeah.
for better or worse, and if a being is on the trajectory of death, and its associated identity doesn't want to deal with that or face that reality, of course it's going
Hmm.
to do everything it can to deny, so, or deny that anyone is, or deny that it could be eternal and is eternal, or deny that the worst universe that could exist does exist, even though it
Right.
does. Um,
Right. And I mean, I think another. I mean, one thing that occurs to me now is like, we've sort of talked in the past about how like the different like bardos and hell realms could all be the same, like in the same physical place, right? That like what may be the
Well,
third bardo for one person is like paradise for another,
uh,
right?
well, yeah,
And they could go out to dinner and like meet each other,
yes,
right?
beings that are experiencing the same physical plane of reality or associated physical plane of reality can be experiencing infinitely different metaphysical realities. And yeah,
Right. And those metaphysical realities are not simply psychological states of being of the
no,
right, like
no, the
it's this
metaphysical
very
supersedes it all.
pernicious, right, it's this very pernicious assumption of materialism that like so-called rationalists think that they uh, that it's not a belief, right? But if you believe that essentially physical reality is the ultimate arbiter of what is, and you sort of like, of course, implicitly deny the supremacy of the metaphysical reality, right? Then the idea of like, that's one of the things that gives birth to the sort of like objective, quote unquote, rejection of the worst possible universe, because you can't say, because if the worst possible universe exists and there's only one universe and we all share it, then we must all live in the worst possible universe. And it's like, no, it's way more intricate than that,
Yeah,
right?
well, it's like yes and no. Yeah, exactly. It's
Right,
yeah, because
right. Yes, yeah, yes, both and neither one. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, both and neither one. Yeah. Um,
Um.
because
So
that subjective being lives in a totally different universe in a sense than another. Yeah, like yeah, exactly.
right,
So
right. Yeah, and so it also like one yet another thing that you are having to come up against is like the culturally accepted shared consensus of like materialism, basically, right? That like the physical universe is the only thing that's real. Consciousness rises out of that, and like the problem with that isn't what the Christians think the problem with materialism is, which is that it denies God. Like, who cares? The problem is that if you carry this deep supposition that the material universe is the basis of reality, then you come to these like incorrect conclusions, because a statement about the universe from one person's perspective has to hold true from for everyone, right? Otherwise it's just like there is the otherwise it can like the universe has to be shared and static and the same for everyone. The only thing that can differ is one's like internal psychological condition,
hmm.
right? Which like, yeah, that's it's understandable why you would think that, but like in the end it's such an impoverished way of
Well,
like it's such an impoverished
it's just a
perception of
lie.
reality.
It's just a lie. I mean,
Yeah, it's just false.
it's just false. And
Yeah.
this is a conversation that comes up all the time in the free will conversations and stuff because I'm constantly repeating that you cannot speak. These people are so violently attempting to speak for all subjective realities and failing
Right.
so blatantly to do so.
Yeah.
And then avoiding the fact that they're doing so. Like it's like you get more out of slamming your head into a wall. Like
Yeah.
in the sense that again, this is what's actually sparked the very root of this conversation that no one is talking about reality as it is. People are
Hmm.
talking about it as they think it is, how they want it to be, how they feel it should be, how they feel it is, how they'd like it to be, how they imagine it is from an abstracted experience in relation to someone else, but not how it actually is for someone else, not how it actually is for them, not how it actually is for the infinite subjectivity spread throughout eternity. Um, it's this projection of personal presupposition or sentimentality blindly thrown onto all of reality that outrightly avoids reality. And,
Yeah.
and um
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like that. It's that the structure that denial of reality is made of is very intricate, right? Like it happens. There's an emotional element to it. There's a there's a almost physical element to it in terms of the assumptions about how the universe is structured and how irrelevant the subjective experience to that structure is, right? Like that's what I'm talking about with this like rationalist, so again, so-called rational perspective on things, right? That so diminishes the subjective experience to a kind of epiphenomenon of physics. And of course, as we all know, physics have to be the same everywhere. And so like, you get into this like very weird position where uh like your like subjective um your own subjective experience essentially like denies the the dogma of um physical reality that is received from the you know popular from popular thinking. And it like yeah it puts people into a tremendous amount of mental gymnastics to try to like keep it all together.
oh my God, yes. Like the backflips and the dick sucking and the circle jerking.
Yeah, it never, it just, yeah, it
And
just,
again,
as all
I
things, is
have no
ephemeral.
problem with any of those things. You can backflip, suck dick, and circle jerk all you want. Just see what you're doing and call it what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
No, I
that's
mean, it's the same. That's my objection as well with all of this stuff. Like, don't, whatever. Like, if you don't want to get vaccinated, fucking don't get vaccinated, and then just be honest that, like, well, the science says that it's the right choice, but I don't want to.
yeah. Do I mean
End of story. Fine. No one's making decisions based on science anyway. For the most part, it's all vibes. Like, go for it, man. I don't know.
yeah, the same thing can be overlaid into any dynamic of character, but it comes out especially when people are attempting to talk on the more seemingly existential, poignant positions. Um,
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, because those are the things that are actually like meaningful to them, and then they're trying to take this posture of like being a cool guy who's like just figuring out the truth and
well,
not
yeah,
like
and all they're ever
hideously emotionally vulnerable to the outcomes of the query, right?
yeah, and all they're doing is posturing. That's what it is. It's a posture party again. It's
Yeah.
like here I am. I'm a compatibilist. I really more consider myself a Jungian, uh, as
Right.
opposed to a student of Plato and a student I'm and what you're doing is that's ad hominem. That's
Right.
uh oh my God, dude.
Oh yeah.
I see them
It's
as puppets, as the puppets on the strings that they are, and they don't see themselves as the puppets on the strings that they are. And that's the crazy
right.
part. It's like
And
and
if
I
they
just
were to say, I see you as a puppet on a string, of course, they would be playing the game that they can't stop playing.
yep.
And hence they can't interpret anything that you said. Like if you were to say that to them, of course, they're going to interpret, well, if I said that, this is what I would mean. Therefore,
Yeah.
that's what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah,
yeah,
blah,
yeah,
blah. And
yeah.
like
That exactly
the
that.
carousel continues
Yep, and
to spin.
that projective, recursive, redundant, reciprocal action of perception and
Yeah.
action. And yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Oh,
and
I know. I know that one very well. Very well. I mean, to be fair, I know it. I know it from both sides. But yeah, it's. it's supremely tiresome.
Oh my God.
You know, my
I want to slap these people in the face. I mean, in the sense like, just like, dude. And that's the funny thing is like, you know, I like not only do I have no reason to lie, I have no, at this point, like, and this is something I reflect on a lot. Like, am I lying? Am I lying? I'll even reflect on it. And I mean,
yeah,
about the things that matter, no, never. I'm never lying. I literally like
yeah,
I cannot make it up because
yeah,
making things up, like the land of make believe, necessitates a realm and a sphere and a paradigm of uncertainty, a realm and a sphere and a paradigm of it could be this, it might be this, it might be whatever, I'm gonna make it
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
I
yeah,
want it to be. I don't live in
yeah,
such a reality. It is literally
yeah,
impossible for me to make believe. I have no
yeah,
means of making believe because it is no longer a, a paradigm or an experience of that facilitates belief of any kind whatsoever. It is strictly and starkly the the whole truth and nothing but the truth at all times. And the only
yeah,
thing I'm attempting to do is utilize my words to the best of my ability in the moment to explicate, uh, to expound or whatever, to explain further
yeah,
the nature of
yeah,
my condition and how it relates to all things. So
yeah,
I'm never speaking a mistruth. I'm always speaking as intently as possible from the absolute reality of my circumstance.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's just an experience that people don't know. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, again,
exactly.
I feel like I have this like similar, like a resonant experience in its like in a different plane when it comes to speaking about like the karmic nature of things and like how things are set up and how things are put into motion and what is required in order to shift things and whatever, which again I know to be true, just because I know it to be true. Like it's a condition that I live in. I don't know why it happened. That's
Yeah.
just how I am. Um, and like, yeah, to see it reflected where people are just like, wow, that's an interesting perspective, or like, I'm really gonna have to think about that one,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. And it's just like, okay, cool, good luck with that. Like, I'm not like,
Well, I mean, I
or
think
or
about
it's
this
or they'll respond and like,
literally.
oh, interesting. Well, I think blah 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 blah,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like, I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
talking about thoughts, bro. You
Well,
know?
exactly the thought. Well, this is how I try to describe it, is that the thoughts that arise to me are only secondary to the reality. They're only an
Right.
aspect of the reality. They're not what are
Yeah.
making my reality. They are what are manifest of the moment to describe the reality. And
Yeah.
and it's just crazy. I mean, think about the number of people who have asked for, wondered what it's like to have either Jesus or quote unquote Satan come and speak the truth about what either of them are, um,
Right.
directly to your face. And then the acting reality being that when that does happen, you straight up tell both of them, no, that's not true. I have to think about that. Like,
Right.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Exactly.
uh, I mean, that's literally what's happening. All these people who
Yeah.
wonder about the nature of everything, about all things, about the nature of Christ and the nature of Satan and the nature of these things that I'm forced to bear the absolute self-apparent reality of, I'm speaking on from that lived condition of that being that they refer to as that one of which should not be spoken, Lord Voldemort. Um,
Right.
but but I'm not that, because that being is a non-being, even though they think of it as a being. I'm simply the embodiment of that. But I have the absolute
Right.
answers of what it is that that thing is, because I am as close to it as any could imagine, or can't
Right.
imagine. More accurately, they cannot
Right.
imagine. And so I speak these things literally from what's a good saying for this? Like literally from the mouth hand of God, but on the opposite side. I mean, I'm
Right.
literally offering the absolute, and they go, no, I have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like that just goes to show you again how this all is working. We're both Christ and the devil speak the absolute truth of the perfect and perfect polarity, and no one listens to either of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
even
it's like
and
the
even the ones who
go on.
say they believe don't believe. They make up
Right.
all these other things that have nothing to do with the absolute truth.
Totally. 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 It's like how like Jordan Peterson loves to talk about how even like atheists actually believe in God because like the fact that they act as moral beings and don't go around just like murdering people proves that they have a moral compass, and that moral compass has to come from like an unacknowledged belief in God or something. I mean, it's like a very bad
Yeah, that's a
argument,
bad. I
but
mean,
that's
there's a
the argument.
much more direct argument of the atheist position to even assume an opposition to God is to assume God. How about that?
Right, right.
Do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
much more.
So
Yeah, yeah, of
to
course, of
even to
course.
assume an opposition, either an atheistic or non-theistic position, is to already assume God. So that's it.
Yeah, but I mean, but atheists are not particularly well versed in like duality in the deeper structures of duality.
Yeah.
So, um, but like and of course, like Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's now an insane moron, but he like a lot of the atheists that he debates like take this argument apart very easily because it's a stupid argument, right? The fact that I act with moral agency does not imply that I subconsciously believe in God.
No, I think, and I also think, and any moral argument of any kind is, I just think all of that is inherently moot, and like
Totally.
it's literally,
Well, God creates the immorality, so what are you gonna
yeah,
like? What are you even talking about?
yeah,
Like God
exactly.
creates the the
It's
the the, the murder.
yeah,
Uh,
the murderer, the murdered, the
yeah,
burden,
everything.
the burden of both. Yeah. So yeah, all of
Yeah,
that stuff
it's
is
just
just
it's very childish.
it's
Um,
it's superficial level thinking that thinks it's deep thinking.
yeah, exactly. Which basically is what Jordan Peterson is an embodiment of. Um, but shoot, where was I going with this? There was a um, I lost the thread. Whatever.
You were saying something about atheists or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was speaking to um it's gone. It's gone. I was riffing on what you were talking about just in terms of people um like thinking that they would like, oh, I would give $1 million if I could just have dinner with Jesus or whatever. And
Yeah,
then like
yeah.
when the actual truth that Jesus spoke comes along, they're just like, I don't think so. That sounds very like that's really giving. That's like big downer.
Yeah.
Like Jesus was all about love and partying and
Oh my
whatever.
God. Yeah,
It's
or
like, dude,
whatever,
you have yeah or whatever.
whatever
Yeah,
presupposition. Yeah. Oh
yeah.
my
It's
God.
just like it's
I mean,
pathetic, really.
it's literally. I mean, this is why the Christian Universalists, like I've brought them up before, are just so funny to me. It's like I get it. They're so desperate. Oh my God, they're so desperate, and I understand because
Yeah, sure.
not only do they desperately want to believe in God, but in order to believe in God or the God that they want to believe in, they have to desperately make it out to be a God that they're okay with. And if they don't, the whole thing comes crumbling down.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so, but
yeah, totally.
that's literally the entire pretense of their supposed
Right. Like
philosophical.
God has to be good, all good, and has to be all powerful.
Well,
And now I have a puzzle to solve for the rest of my fucking life. Good, like
yes,
figure that one out.
or to force
Right.
it.
Right.
They literally I don't know if I've given you this metaphor before, but they're the type who will stab you in the face, and while they're stabbing you in the face, they're gonna say, "You're saved, you're saved, you're saved."
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
really. I mean,
No, I mean
that's
for sure. I mean, it reminds me of like the first slave, literally the first slave ship to come to Ghana, maybe was called. I don't remember the African country that came, but
it's
whatever it
called
was,
salvation or
like
something.
it was called Jesus Saves. It was called Jesus Saves.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
like the first slave ship was called Jesus Saves.
Oh my god.
Unbelievable, man.
Yep.
Like, holy Christ. It's just the same fucking garbage again and again and again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they don't see it. That's I mean that's the just again that 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 complete astoundment that I have of just how little awareness can there be? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how is it like I'm perturbed. I'm not only perturbed by my reality, but part of that being that I am so perturbed by the fact that people are so incredibly incapable of seeing what they are and what things and how things are. Like it's so the experience, the Matrix experience is so immersive, right? Like
Yeah. Totally. Well, and here's my question. Like, how is it that you, and I mean, I could ask myself the same question, so don't think that this is a gotcha, right? But like, how is it that you, seeing all you can see, continue to be surprised or appalled or flabbergasted?
well
You know what I mean?
because that's integrated into it. I mean, like I tried to describe it to you before, where like despite my near infinite internal perspective and the witnessing of all the things that I witness, I'm still having to live this subjective experience. I still have to bear
Right.
the burden of being what I am and be perpetually enthralled in horrible awe and horrible
Right.
revelation and horrible
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
recognition of phenomenon, and I will still have to and I am suffering all those things. So and I
Yeah.
will suffer the destruction of this flesh, and I will suffer so on and so on and so forth. So that's all part of it. The
Yeah,
biological,
no,
you know
I, I, I think that the question, that question comes from my own misunderstanding that still carries this kind of like salvation assumption
yeah,
that, you know what I mean? That
yeah,
like the truth will set you free,
right.
right? Um, which,
Well,
in small, I think, sometimes that's true. Uh,
again, but think about
but
who's
but
who.
set who free?
Yes, set who free exactly, and who is
Yeah.
the one who's speaking those words?
Right. Yeah.
Who spoke those words, right?
That was Jesus, right?
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
in John, I believe.
So Christ himself spoke those words.
Yeah.
Christ, this one that we've already discussed, happens to have the infinite privilege of being the sovereign Lord of the universe. Christ, who he himself calls himself the way, the truth, and the life.
Right.
Because from him all things are self-originating, and he is the way and the truth and life for him and himself and all things. But that does not mean all things have the inherent access to the benevolent condition of Christ, nor does it mean that his truth is the whole truth. His truth is half of the truth. The truth is absolute in all circular, infinite, redundant polarities. and at,
Mm.
and and from his truth, of which he is the truth and the way and the truth of the life, he says it like it is. I am the way and the truth of the life, and the truth shall set you free. Meaning, if you come to me, but what he really should be saying and doesn't say, if you have the capacity to come to me, if you've
Right.
if you've been allotted the means to be saved, you will be saved. If you've if you and ultimately, if you are saved, you are saved. If you are not, you are not. I mean, and see, so there's these many words spoken by Christ that he speaks from the true position of being Christ without the necessity of having to know what it is to not be Christ. And thus,
Right.
he doesn't fill in those filler words in regards to, because from Christ's position all is absolute, and it is. And so essentially there's no distinction between him saying things one that way, and he don't I mean he spoke perfectly. I would say he spoke perfectly. I mean, in a way,
Hmm.
how I say, like, I speak nothing but the truth because it's an inherent aspect of my condition.
Yeah.
And in the same way Christ did the same, but you, as you know, our truths are, well, they're infinitely and eternally integrated, his and mine, but they're also infinitely and eternally opposing and
Yes. Yeah.
polarizing. But they are
Yeah.
both infinitely and eternally absolute and true. So
Hmm.
you see how where the truth goes. The truth is that which encircles everything. It's that which
Right.
encapsulates everything.
Right. Yeah. And of course, it is no, that what you're saying is no comfort to those who have conceits of being truth seekers, hoping to stumble upon some eternally, never changing fucking, um, you know, foundational rock that they can build their lives on, right?
Oh, yeah,
It's
and
more in the realm of like the Buddhist story about how some Buddhist dude, like, one of the kings was like interested in learning the principles of Zen, and the monk was like, all right, are you sure? And the king, I think it was a king, says yes. And he's like, okay. And so he like unfolds the truth, and it completely just like ruins the king's, uh it's just like, oh my god, this is horrible. Like, where am I where am I to take shelter now? And the Zen monk tells him, nowhere. Like,
yeah.
Buddhism leaves not one tile to hold above your head and not one square foot to stand upon the ground. um it's a good story, even if, as we've discussed, Buddhism is the religion of privilege.
Well, it's,
Still,
yes.
the Zen guys, the
It,
Zen
it's
guys,
well
buck tradition to some
because, well,
degree.
there's a few things to cover there. Yes, Buddhism is derived from a man of infinite privilege. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, and now the systemic perpetuation of institutionalized Buddhism of any kind, is a derivation of a story of a man of infinite privilege. And so now
Yeah.
you are setting out on a path of a man who happened to sit beneath a tree.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
just like those screenshots I sent you the other day, and I mean, it was this exact conversation because,
Yes.
but these people cannot be, even though that's an infinite truth that I'm speaking, an absolute truth.
And it's a
It's,
truth that like a true Zen master would be totally into, right? Like, yeah, Buddhism is nothing but the story of a guy who sat beneath a tree. Like, that's a very Zen
I
way
mean,
to look at it.
yeah, It literally is. It's a story of a man who happened to sit beneath a tree. And
Yeah.
if you get upset about that, that is all just indication of the fallacies of your position and presumption, so that you are clinging on to so desperately. And
Yeah.
guess what? They nearly all of them got upset and get upset because they're
Yeah.
not doing what they're doing for any other reason that they think they're onto something. And
Right.
if you think you're onto something, you're not onto something.
Yeah.
You're
Oof.
just you're just you're just tricking yourself over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
This is what I try to get at over and over and over again, is like, at the point of the absolute, there is no more there's no more speculation in the typical sense. And this is why I say it over
Right.
and over and over again. There's no
Yeah.
speculation of what may be or what may not be. There is only what is.
Hmm.
There's nothing remained. There is some Buddhist saying, I forget who said it. It was like, I think, is it beyond beyond, so far beyond, or something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like what one of them cried when he was enlightened, I think. If it's the one that if it's what if it's what I'm thinking of, that it's what that like there was some monk who like got enlightened, and that was what he cried
Yeah, something like
when he
that.
like finally saw the truth.
Yeah, beyond beyond, so far beyond. Because just when you thought you were beyond, it's infinitely further beyond that, and then infinitely further beyond that.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, there's just no more. Yeah, there's no more speculation. There's only experience, and and that's the case for me, and that's the case for whoever's been lucky on the other side of the polarity.
Yeah. 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 Well, like I say, I'm always surprised that you can stand to keep up the arguments on
Oh,
Reddit.
I can't stand it. I hate every second of it. I loathe
But
every second.
you keep doing it, is what I mean.
I can't not. I
Uh,
literally have nothing else. So,
oh God.
yeah,
Well, hey man, I need to wrap it up. I've got to uh start prepping for bed.
sounds good.